Okay, now that we've learned so many things about light and shadows, it's time to have some fun and apply what we know to our artwork. So far, we've placed all photos into perspective. From a light point of view, I think we're in pretty good shape. We just need to paint some backlight, which we will do at the end. The rest of the light is part of the stock images, and it's good as is. When choosing the stock images, I've made sure that all objects have the same type of light, as this is crucial to create realistic artworks. In this case, we can jump straight to the shadows. Okay, so let's determine what kind of shadows we need to paint. We can tell that the artwork has a soft light. As explained in Lesson 1, we know this because the shadows are soft. Also, looking at the background image, it's easy to see that it has only ambient light as there is no direct light. And as we've learned earlier, ambient light produces soft shadows. Now let's look at the direction of light. In Lesson 2 of this section, we talked about the importance of choosing images with the same direction of light, as otherwise, we won't be able to blend them properly. I chose the objects with light coming from the side, and since we know that shadows are always opposite to the light, we need to paint shadows on the left side of each object. The shadows also need to be very light because the ambient light is bouncing off a white wall. And since white reflects more light than any other color, it drastically reduces the darkness of the shadows. So for this artwork, we need to paint shadows, and they need to be soft since we only have ambient light. The shadows need to be on the left of each object because the light is coming from the right. The shadows should be very light because most of the light is bouncing off white walls, making the shadows less dark. At the end, we need to paint some backlight, which I will explain later on. With this information and with what we've learnt in Lesson 4, we have all the knowledge we need to start working on the shadows. I've painted all the shadows beforehand, and during this lesson I will just be turning on the layers. The reason is that the purpose of this course is not to show you specific Photoshop techniques, as there are already plenty of YouTube videos covering that. The aim of this course is to teach you the 3 pillars, which are absolutely crucial for creating high-quality composites. Most of the time, when painting shadows, I simply use a soft brush at 20% opacity with 0% hardness. As explained in Lesson 4, when painting shadows you always need to keep in mind the shape of the object, the light position and also the viewer's position. So basically, you want to paint the shadows as they would look in real life as best as you can. If in doubt, always refer to some inspiration and examples. Okay, let's start. First things first, the contact shadow. We know that all objects are touching the ground, therefore we need to add contact shadows. Contact shadows are the darkest part of the shadow, and they are visible in the areas where ambient light doesn't hit. I like to start with the contact shadow so that I don't forget to paint it in, as without it the shadows wouldn't look realistic. We need to add the contact shadow for the front tiger and also the dress. We don't need to worry about the other assets, as we cannot see where they touch the ground. Let's start with the front tiger and switch on the contact shadow layer. I've added the contact shadow between the tiger and the floor. As you can see, this is very minimal, but it's still crucial to have it, as it will make the shadows more convincing. When painting contact shadows, I use black as a color and a soft brush at 100% opacity and 0% hardness. Then, I reduce the opacity as needed. We also need to add contact shadow to the dress. This is not going to be a drastic change as the bottom part is already very dark. Let's turn on the contact shadow layer and see how it looks. As you can see, the difference is minimal, but it's very important to include it. And that's all about contact shadows. Now we can jump onto the form shadows. Judging from how the artwork is currently looking, I think that we can match and blend all objects better by painting a bit of form shadow on each of them. We're able to do this since all assets have soft light. Remember that we can always go back and refine shadows later once we have blended all objects. Let's start with the tiger in the front. The light is coming from the right, so we need to paint the shadows on the left. I prefer to paint the areas closest to the floor first. This helps me blend the remaining cast shadows better and reduce a lot of back and forth. Let's see how it looks. Once we've done the areas closest to the floor, we can work on the rest of the form shadow to further blend the object. So, let's turn on the layer with the rest of the form shadow. When painting form shadows, we need to analyze the shape of the object and paint accordingly, and only add shadows where needed. Don't paint shadows just for the sake of painting them. When painting form shadows, make sure the layer is set as a clipping mask of the object layer below it. Therefore, the painted shadow will only be visible within the object, in this case, the tiger. Okay, let's do the tiger on the left and go ahead and turn on the form shadow layer. Again, the shadow layer is a clipping mask of the object layer below, so the painted shadow only shows on the tiger. When drawing the shadows on the tiger, I had to take the woman's cast shadow into consideration, as this would show on the tiger. So I painted a bit of shadow on the right-hand side. Also, you can notice that the shadows on the left are very light, and that's because the light is bouncing off a white wall, which would make the shadows lighter. Okay, let's turn on the form shadow layer for the tiger on the right. As you can see, the form shadow is a bit darker in the bottom part. That's because the light is less likely to reach the area between the woman's dress and the tiger. Now that we've done the form shadows of the three tigers, we can already notice an improvement in how the objects blend together, and they are also looking more three-dimensional. That's the power of handling light correctly. It helps you create depth but also makes your artwork look more true to life. On to the last form shadow. That of the woman. Earlier in this section, we mentioned that the stock image of the woman had two lights, a main light from the right and a second fill light from the left. We need to hide the one on the left, because in our composite, there is no light source on the left-hand side, except for the bounce from the white wall. Again, we are able to hide this as the light is very subtle as it's a soft light photo. Let's switch on the shadows that I've painted and see how it looks. Yes, that's much better. When painting these areas, I did not paint with black. Instead, I picked a dark color from the skin and darkened it a bit more. For the shadows on the woman's hair, I ended up picking 4 different colors to make it look realistic. When I tried using only one color, it looked flat. I find painting form shadows on human skin the most difficult because it's easy to mess up if you're not careful. So when painting on human skin, make sure to paint slowly while continuously analyzing the shapes you're painting on. Each body is different, and each photo is shot differently, so look at the other shadows on the skin and use them as a guide. And bear in mind that you are painting on a three-dimensional object, so you need to consider the depth as well. When in doubt, find reference photos on Google Images and study them. Go outdoors, look around you, and take mental notes. Every scenario is different, and it also changes depending on the time of the day. During sunrise, you get certain types of shadows. If it's noon, the shadows would be totally different, and so on. It's the understanding of these principles that will make you a great photo manipulation artist. Technique will come in time, but without this knowledge, technique is worthless. Let's do the shadows on the dress. For this, I've darkened the left side of the dress since light is coming from the right. I've also added the right tiger's cast shadow on the right side of the dress. Let's turn on the layers to see how it looks. I also needed to paint the cast shadow of the front tiger on the woman, which looks like this. Okay, let's do a bit of before and after. This is where we started. And this is where we're at. I think we can agree that there's a drastic improvement and the objects are blending better. So, the next thing is the cast shadows on the floor. Such shadows are produced when objects block the light, casting their shadow on the surface beneath them or other objects close to them. We've already painted most cast shadows on the objects, so we just need to paint the ones on the floor around these marked areas. Before that, let me show you how I use layers when working with shadows. As you can see from my layers, I split shadows into separate parts. This allows me to easily tweak a specific part of the shadow later on. For example, if I painted all shadows on the same layer, and later realize I need to tweak only the darkest part of the shadow, I would be in trouble. In fact, I would probably be better off starting from scratch. But by splitting the shadows into separate layers, I can edit or even redo a specific part of the shadow without messing up the rest. Whenever you have shadows available in a stock image, if you can, cut out the shadow and use that. Some shadows can be tricky to paint, especially when using organic objects with complex shapes. This will save you time and, more often than not, produce a better result than painting the shadow yourself. Let's start with the front tiger and turn on the cast shadow layer. As you can notice, I only added a very subtle shadow. Firstly, because most of the shadow is on the black tiles, which would be barely visible. Secondly, we also have ambient light bouncing off a white wall, which would lighten the shadows. And of course, the closer the shadow is to the object, the darker it becomes, like these areas here. Next, let's switch on the woman's cast shadow. Using the shadow size technique we learnt in lesson 4, we know that the woman's shadow would extend outside of the canvas, so I only had to paint part of it. Let's do the tiger at the left and switch on the cast shadows. And done. We don't need to paint cast shadows for the tiger on the right because its shadow is hidden by the woman. Here's how the artwork looked before adding the shadows. And this is how it is now. Wow, that's a huge difference, and it's looking way more realistic. The last thing that we need to paint is the backlight. The reason I did not cover this in the previous lessons is because backlight is not always present in an artwork. It all depends on the scene and the position of the light. Backlight is when you have light coming from the back of a subject. And since we have the light coming in equally from all arches, it means that we also have light coming from behind our objects. So we need to paint a bit of light on the edges of the right and left tiger and the throne. I didn't bother painting on the front tiger because most of the backlight is blocked by the other assets. So keep backlight in mind for your artworks, and don't forget to paint it. I suggest leaving it for last, so it doesn't get hidden by any shadows. Most of the time, I use a 20% soft brush for this. Let's turn on the backlight layers and see how they look. This is the throne. It's very subtle, but it makes a difference. This is the tiger on the right. I've mostly added backlight on the back, which really helps gel the tiger to the background. And this is the tiger on the left. I've taken a similar approach as the other tiger, adding a bit of backlight on the back to blend it better with the background. Similarly to when we're painting shadows, we need to study the shape of the asset we're painting on and consider where the light would hit. That's it. We're all done with shadows and light.